Right now, the US government is doing something it has never done before in the history of crypto, and almost nobody is talking about the real reason why. It's not because Bitcoin hit a new high. It's not because a celebrity tweeted something. The federal government has spent the last 2 years quietly building an entire legal framework around digital assets. And if you think that's about speculation, you're missing the actual story. Now, I'm Alina, and around here we talk wealth. Before we go any further, this is not financial advice, this is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold anything, and I am not making any claims about any individual's motives or intentions. This is educational and entertainment purposes only, based on publicly available legislative and regulatory information, and you should always do your own research before making decisions with your money. Okay? Good. If you're new here, hit subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of story we go deep on, the stuff sitting quietly in legislation while everyone else is watching candles. So let's restate what's actually happening, plain and simple. In 2025, the federal government passed the Genius Act, the first comprehensive federal law governing stablecoins in U.S. history. Around the same time, an executive order directed federal agencies to take a more favorable posture toward digital assets, with the stated goal of making the United States the leading jurisdiction for crypto in the world. And right now, there's a second, even bigger piece of legislation, the Clarity Act, sitting in the Senate, which would finally define, in law, how digital assets are regulated, right? This isn't a rumor, this isn't a leak. This is public record, sitting on Congress's own website. Here's the thing I want you to sit with. Governments do not build entire regulatory frameworks around things they consider unimportant. Nobody writes 300 pages of legislation for a fad. When a government moves this deliberately, this is not chasing a trend. This is claiming territory before someone else does. Let me give you a picture, because I think this is where it clicks. Imagine a door and a window. For years, crypto in America lived in a legal gray zone, technically not banned, but never really let in the front door either. Companies operated through the window, half legitimate, always one lawsuit away from getting shut down. Now imagine that same building, except this time, someone walks up and installs an actual front door, with locks, with a doorbell, with a legal address. That's not decoration. That's a statement that says, this is now a permanent part of the house. And once there's a front door, everyone who was hesitant to walk through the window suddenly has a reason to come inside. Banks, institutions, pension funds, the people who were never going to touch crypto while it lived in legal limbo. That's what's happening right now in Washington. The government isn't building this framework because it loves crypto. It's building this framework because of something much bigger, a global race over who controls the next generation of financial infrastructure. Right now, other countries, the UK, Singapore, the EU, are racing to build their own digital asset frameworks too. This isn't one country being generous. This is competition over who writes the rule book that the rest of the world ends up using. And here's where XRP fits into this. Not through speculation, but through infrastructure. Ripple's stablecoin has already driven billions in settlement volume on its ledger. Ripple has aligned itself with a new multi-company stablecoin consortium backed by some of the largest payment companies in the world. None of that is an accident, and none of it depends on price charts. It depends on which networks are positioned to move money once the legal framework is finalized. So when people ask why now, the honest answer isn't mysterious. It's that the pieces of financial infrastructure that survive a regulatory shift are usually the ones that were already quietly building real utility before the shift happened. Now, I want to be really clear about something, because I don't do conspiracy framing on this channel. I don't know anyone's personal motives, and neither does anyone else making confident claims about it online. What I do know, because it's public record, is that the US is racing to build a legal framework for digital assets faster than at any point in its history. And that race is about global financial competitiveness, not about any one person or any one coin. And again, this is just my own positioning, not a directive. I think the biggest mistake people make with news like this is treating it as short-term hype instead of long-term structural change. Regulatory frameworks don't get built and then unbuilt a year later. Once the rules exist, the institutions that were sitting on the sidelines start moving in, slowly, over years, not overnight. The people who understood that in the boring legislative phase are usually the ones already positioned by the time everyone else notices. And that brings me to something a lot of you are underestimating, the tax piece. Because if the US really is building permanent financial infrastructure around digital assets, and you're holding those assets in a normal taxable account, you are setting yourself up to hand a significant chunk of any long-term gain straight to the IRS during exactly the period when this asset class is being legitimized at the federal level. That's not a strategy. That's leaving money on the table, because nobody explained the alternative. This is why I'm such a strong advocate for holding digital assets inside a self-directed retirement account, specifically a Roth structure, where your growth has the potential to be completely tax-free down the line. Think about that. The same conviction, the same long-term positioning, except structured so the government isn't your silent partner on the upside. We've partnered with a self-directed retirement platform that makes this simple to set up, and they're currently offering a funding bonus for new accounts. Details are below. This is the kind of structural move that separates people who understood the story from people who actually benefited from it. So here's what I want you to think about. A government doesn't spend 2 years building legal infrastructure around something it thinks is temporary. That's not hype. That's permanence being written into law, quietly, while most people are still asking, will the price go up this month? So here's my question for you. When a government moves this deliberately to build permanent rules around an entire asset class, do you think that's about speculation? Or do you think it's about something much bigger that most people haven't connected yet? Drop your honest take in the comments. I read every one of them. All right, that's what I've got for you today. As always, do your own research, form your own conclusions. This is your money and your future, not mine. Stay wise, stay wealthy, and I'll see you in the next video.